Hello and welcome to the Hero Spouse. I'm Kendra Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have Cliff. Cliff has a bomb drop of March 24th, 2024. A date of marriage of, I think it's 2004 because he references being married for 20 years. But it says 2024, so there's a typo in there. He has a boomerang who is a high energy replayer. He says, after 20 years together, one day my wife said she's not attracted to me and no longer in love with me. We have two lovely children, a daughter who's 12 and a son who's 14. She now spends money like crazy, has no empathy, and she's selfish. She's the opposite of the person I loved and married in every way. There is an alienator and it's physical, I think. And it's physical. I think seeing her father fighting cancer and a brain tumor sent her into midlife crisis. After bomb drop, I got help and I have gone all in on my inner work, therapy, mindfulness, in order to be the lighthouse and safe space for the kids. We have a separation agreement signed and notarized, so everything is sorted out there. They, the children I ask, don't live with me. She ran. We have not signed a disillusionment yet. I'm trying to stall this as long as possible as a stander, but every so often she brings it up as it's not finalized. I know this, of course, but continue to try to distract her from this. I don't want the papers to be finalized. Am I stalling her midlife crisis by trying to stop this signing? I fear in my heart that if I sign it, my wanting to stand will be greatly affected. Okay. So the first thing I want to tell you, Cliff, is I want you to make up a decision about what you want. And I know you have, but you're still uncertain because you say you are concerned. You have a fear in your heart that if you sign the papers, these final divorce papers or the notarized papers, that your decision to stand will be greatly affected. You'll change your mind if you sign these papers. So those papers have a lot of power for you, don't they? There are people who say that's their line in the sand, but you're not saying it's your line in the sand. You're saying you're afraid it will be. Why is that? Because what I'm telling you is you can tell yourself what it is. But what you're telling yourself is you're afraid it is something. And you don't know what it is, but you're afraid it's something. But don't you get to tell yourself something? Isn't it your job or your ability? Don't you have the ability to tell yourself very concretely what something is going to be for you? So you get to say, this is what I want it to be. I am not going to. You can say, I have the right to change my mind as situations change, and I can review it as the situation changes. That's different. I mean, your wife goes out and does a lot more horrible things, and you can review the situation. Your children have different things that affect them throughout this. Or your wife does wonderful things. You can review the situation and change your mind. I mean, let's say that you weren't standing and your wife did wonderful things. You could change to a stander, right? We can change our minds. But you can say with concrete certainty, given the trend line of, or given what it is right now, what you say you're doing, what you want. And it sounds to me like what you want is one thing, but you're afraid. So here's what I want you to know is you choose. So you're fearing in your heart that if you sign, because you have two questions. You're wondering if signing, if you're stalling her midlife crisis, and you're wondering if you're going to affect your own feelings. Okay? So you choose your feelings right up front. And that's a hypnotic thing for yourself. You tell yourself what you're going to feel, what you're allowed to. Okay? So you just tell yourself, you give yourself, in other words, you give yourself the permission. You give give yourself permission to change your mind. But what's your questioning here isn't about changing your mind. You're questioning because you're allowed to change your mind. That's different. what I want you to do instead is, I'm allowed to change my mind as the situation changes. But I have permission to continue to stand for my marriage even after a divorce is finalized. I have permission to do that. If I want to reconcile my marriage, if I want this for my wife, for my family, if it is in the best interest of us, if I want that, if I feel that we can come together again, even though right now and what she's being isn't looking like this. But if she can and will, if she will someday, she can come, if that happens and she becomes the woman I know she can be, I am a stander. Now, I'm not telling you should do that. That's your choice. But yes, you can do that. You can give, it's up to you to give yourself that permission, okay? So then now to your next question. Am I stalling her midlife crisis by trying to stop from signing? In other words, by not signing, by avoiding signing divorce papers, by not giving her what he wants, by resisting her. So the title that I have given is, does midlife crisis persist when we resist? Do we prolong, promote, or encourage the midlife crisis by resisting it? Or are we resisting the midlife crisis by our actions? So if we refuse to sign divorce papers, are we being resistant? Not necessarily. It could be dependent on the situation. Do you feel divorce is in the best interest of your family? So it doesn't have to be like, no, I'm not giving you that because, if divorce is not in the best interest of your family, or if divorce is not, sometimes divorce isn't happening because we have to go back and forth on different things we're contesting on. But here's the other thing. There comes a point where you're just dragging things out for the purpose of dragging them out. Or in other words, you're being resistant for the purpose of being resistant, which is not legally allowed in most situations. And the courts will not look upon that kindly. So one of the ways we drag that out without getting that ire of the court is we disagree on valid points. Sometimes they're silly points. Sometimes they aren't. You're going over custody battles, and sometimes those are very important things to hash out. And division of assets, and alimony, and child support, that sort of thing. Other things are, Chuck got my name wrong, or I think it was his lawyer. My name isn't Kendra, it's Kenda Ruth, and everybody says Kendra, and I'm sure it was the lawyer. My husband's not going to get it wrong. In the paperwork, well, I didn't correct my name. I just sent back, wife's name is incorrect, must be corrected. So I didn't give them the correct name. I told them they had to correct it. So I didn't make it easy on them. And then it was corrected in the next go round. He didn't put my date of birth in because he thought I should fill it out. I'm like, no, he could fill that out. I'm not going to help you divorce me because I wasn't required, at least in my situation. They didn't require. I'm not filling this out for you. He called me up and said, can you give me this information? And I said, no, you can find it for yourself. You're costing me more money. And I said, too bad. So those are ways. They weren't going to drag it out long. It was stuff you could look up and the lawyers could look it up. Things like that. But, there are bigger ways to drag it out. But if you're just sitting there with completed paperwork and refusing to sign, the courts may have a problem with that piece of it. Okay? So let me read just one more time. Okay, so this is the disillusionment. another word for divorce. My mom likes to go about it. There's no such thing as divorce. We're going on semantics when we say that, okay? We have not signed it yet. I'm trying to stall as long as possible as a standard. I understand. But she brings it up as it's not finalized. I know, but you're continuing to distract her. She does bring it up. I don't want the papers to be finalized. Am I stalling her midlife? I don't know that you're stalling her midlife crisis. You're just stalling the divorce. But it depends on what she thinks she can't do. There are some that have no problem. For some, divorce is a barrier, I guess. But there are some. So, for instance, in my situation, the alienator, Mary, told Chuck that I won't sleep with you. And then she slept with him. But in the beginning, he thought, well, she won't sleep with me. I have to be divorced. Oh my God. So I have to go file for divorce. Well, then it turned out she would sleep with him. But he filed. So I guess maybe it was she wouldn't sleep with him unless he filed for divorce. Okay. Then it was, I won't sleep with her until, I guess maybe all that she needed was proof to file for divorce. But then he stopped that and she continued to sleep with him. Okay. Then later on, he wondered if he should get fake divorce papers to satisfy her. So he thought she was going through one after he ended it. So there are things, that just, did he need that to prove to her? Those are the barriers. Does she think she needs this barrier for some reason? And if she thinks she crosses the barrier of divorce. But maybe it's a false barrier. Because in my situation, it was a false barrier. It didn't really exist. They crossed the barrier before it even got there, even though they thought they were going to have this barrier. Divorce. It didn't matter. They slept together. MLCers, they pretend they're divorced already, and they say, I feel like I'm divorced, so it doesn't really matter. So what does it matter? There are certain things, maybe, you have some freedom with money because the assets are split up. So in my view, no, I don't think that. But I'm sure there are things in different situations that it can free up. Maybe it's freeing something up in yours. At the same time, I don't know, if you're at those last little bits, but if there are valid things that you can do for stalling in it, then I would do them. That's okay. But you're not describing valid things. Now, what I am seeing, though, is it's just that it's gone really fast because your bomb drop was 6 months ago. That's what it just feels like. It's wow. That divorce got filed and is at close. Is that close to this? Is it close to finalization within bomb drop to finalized 6 months? It just feels really, really fast. So I am wondering why it's gone so fast, especially with 2 children. And that's why if it could be taking longer, but it sucks. It sucks. For you, there is standing after divorce. But also, there are some situations, okay, where you have a high energy replayer. And they're so high energy. They are burning through everything. And you've described no empathy. The opposite. She just is so selfish that you have to have this clean break, get it out, and let them go, get through the crisis, burn, and I mean burn through it. Baptism by fire. Mythology has all of these metaphors of fire and burning through these things. Let them go through the crisis. Let the crisis burn up. And I don't know if it's going to burn up in 2 years, 3 years, upwards of 7 years. Maybe it will go faster. I'm not saying it will. I have this hope that it would, but we all have that, okay? Let it happen. You still have to co-parent. If you could get those kids, get them. Because she is not. She's spending like crazy. And you are protecting yourself. You are protecting your children with a divorce right now. It is protective. And you co-parent with her. And you're cordial and you're gracious. And you get a life. That doesn't mean you date. If you're standing and if you want to reconcile and you want to protect the finances that are left in your care, in everything that you get after the split, you protect those. Because she can't touch those. She spends her side like crazy and loses it. You would protect your 50. And then, when she's burned everything up, are you still there? Because maybe she is the same beautiful person. But that same beautiful person, I'm going to tell you, she might be, but there's some differences. And the differences is she has guilt, shame, and no money. She has guilt, shame. She just spent everything. And she comes to you going, it's not just that I had an affair, so I cheated on you. But I took half of our money. I took half of everything we had. And basically I just let a match to it. Now, would you ever take me back? And would you? Maybe. There's going to be a lot of repair. Okay? Because she's burning through a lot. And you can't stop it. Sorry. Cliff, you can't stop it. You cannot stop the midlife crisis. You can protect your pieces that you get from the courts. You can protect your children. Okay? And you can protect the marriage that you have. You put it in a box. And you get to choose. Okay? The same beautiful woman is there. But you have to be willing to realize that that woman is there, but 50% of the assets and stuff that you've built together are going to be gone. Maybe. Or whatever. The way you're describing it. And the more you can protect now, the better. Okay? I'm sorry. I hope this is helpful. I'm sorry. But I will see everybody in the next question.